Hello and welcome to Tennessee Informer. Thank you all for joining us tonight. What can a former Muslim from Iran turned Christian pastor tell us about Islam? Is there really any such thing as radical Islam, or is it all radical? What are their intentions for our country and the West in general? What is the Red-Green Alliance and why is it so dangerous? Can we save our country? This and more with our guest tonight, Pastor Shahram Hadian. Thanks for joining us. Hey, how are you doing tonight, Pastor? Glad to have you. Appreciate it.
I'm doing well, Dave. Thank you so much for having me on. It's a privilege.
Well, somebody told me several months ago that I needed to get you on, and I should have had you on for now, but I do appreciate you taking the time, and got a lot of ground to cover, so let's go ahead and get to it. Tell us the story of how you came to this country.
Well, I think it's a fascinating story, one that I can just say thank you, God, for His work in my life, because having been born in Iran, born into a Muslim family, Iran, of course, was a very different place when I was born there than it is today because of what happened in 1979. But my dad, my mom was a school teacher. My dad was a career military officer under the Shah of Iran. Iran was, if you remember, they were allies of the United States. It was a very modern country. The Shah had modernized, westernized, brought them kind of out of the 6th century, so to speak, into a powerhouse in the Middle East. Unfortunately, all that changed when we had an administration change here in the United States under Jimmy Carter, and the administration backed the Islamists, the guy named Khomeini, who was
right
at that time in France. And they backed that. They turned on the Shah. And then this began to there was some infiltration and there was underpinnings. And my dad, being in the military, began to sense that because he was a liaison officer to the Army, the United States Army, as an Army officer in Iran. So basically his position got cut.
Right.
There was no more liaisoning. So he saw things shifting. He saw that there was an infiltration going on in Iran, and he took early retirement. And then in 1978, he came home one day and said, "We need to get out." There was beginning to be protests and riots, and there was always, Dave, there was always a sort of a communist, socialist, Marxist underpinning in Iran.
Right.
The communists had been working in Iran since the 1940s to try to overthrow Iran and then get rid of the Shah. But now, all of a sudden, there's this talk of an Islamic revolution.
Right.
And that, as you mentioned in your intro about this red-green axis, I saw it firsthand in Iran. That's exactly what happened. The only difference was instead of the red, it was the green that was, in the forefront,
right,
and the red was behind the scenes. Yeah, exactly, there, like that. That's that axis that we saw working in Iran. So my dad, we packed our bags and caught one of the last commercial flights out in 1978, December of 78. Unbeknownst to us, 5 weeks later, as the Shah was out of the United States seeking medical attention for cancer, the government collapsed. They committed the coup. They brought Khomeini back in, and that's 46 years ago. And it's still now, we're still dealing with Iran today as one of the worst regimes on the planet, one of the most antithetical to the United States, to Israel, to freedom, and that's the Iranian people are suffering for it. But that was the backstory. My Christian backstory is that because of all that, I really began to question my Islamic background.
Right.
And it was not until 1999, when I was now 28 years old, God brought some very, very bold Christians into my life who began to share the good news of the gospel of Jesus Christ with me. And through many, many encounters, God showed me that, listen, there's only one truth. One is a lie, one is true. And I knew what that meant. I knew that meant that Islam is not of God,
Right.
and that there was but one true God. And 26 years ago, I made the leap by faith, and I became a follower of Christ. Left Islam, became an apostate, which which carries a death sentence.
Yeah.
And the rest is history, as they say. I've been following the Lord, and then very quickly after that, I became a pastor. Went to ministry school and got a biblical degree and became a pastor. And I've been pastoring and traveling and speaking for the last 20 plus years. Trying to warn, by the way, Brother Dave, I've been trying to warn this nation about this red-green infiltration for the past 2 decades. And look where we are at today.
Yeah, we're very slow. Yeah, we're very slow learners. I mean, I can't believe that after 9/11 that it didn't click. I want to hit something you just said about persecute. I want to talk about persecution of former Muslims. First, how did your family react when you became a Christian?
Well, that was the weird part of it, is that, my mom's side was very devout. You asked a question in your intro, is there such a thing as radicalism? There's no radicalism in Islam. In Islam, there is fundamentalism. You either follow a true Islam.
Right.
Now, I'm born in Iran, so I'm on the Shia. I was on the Shia side of Islam,
right,
which is about 13-14% population of the 2 billion Muslims now.
Right.
Then the Sunnis are the majority. They're like 83-84%. But nevertheless, there is still fundamental schools of Islamic teaching. And so my mom was very fundamental on her side. My dad, as career military guy.
Right.
This is a guy that said, I'm a Muslim, but he drank alcohol, which is forbidden in Islam.
Right.
He ate pork, forbidden in Islam.
Wow.
He smoked, forbidden in Islam. He didn't pray 5 times. So he was not a good practicing Muslim, but yet he claimed that he was a Muslim. But yet when I became a Christian, on day 3 after I became a Christian, I sat down and told my parents what I've done. My dad disowned me. And now, fortunately, my internal family did not want to harm me.
Right.
But I started getting death threats from the Islamic community.
Where were you living at the time?
We were down in actually Atlanta, Georgia. I moved from Canada because when we left Iran, we initially lived in the States. And then under circumstances, because of the hostage crisis that happened in Iran, we ended up having to migrate to Canada.
Right.
And then I migrated back in 1998 to the States, and then became a Christian in Atlanta, Georgia. That's where God got a hold of my life. And that's where I told my parents. They were actually down visiting my brother that lived in the area, that lived in the South. And I shared with them, and my dad couldn't even look at me.
Wow.
He said, you've disgraced our family, you've disgraced our culture. And it wasn't so much the religious aspect of it, it was more the cultural aspect of it. But as I said, nevertheless, I've had just a few over the last 26 years, a few death threats on my life for being a Christian and being vocal about exposing Islam.
Right. What about your mom? How did she react?
Same. My mom tried to be more neutral, but, had to follow my dad. And it was interestingly, when their hearts softened, it was after I met my wife. And my wife, having been raised in a Christian home, in a Christian family, almost all her life, somehow that softened their heart a little bit. And so when, before we got married, we sort of, there's a little bit of a restoration of the relationship there. But to their deathbeds, I tried to share Christ with them. And they never, unfortunately, at least to me, overtly accepted Christ. And so, my dad's died about 15 years ago. My mom about 4 years ago.
Oh, sorry to hear that.
Thank you.
And a lot of people don't understand that it is a death sentence. Matter of fact, I'm trying to remember the name of the group here. It's the guys here in Tennessee. I met him through Bill Warner, and the Crescent Project. It's the Crescent Project.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so we had him come to Stewart County and speak. This has probably been 15 years, but he would bring former Muslims who had converted, and this is here they were living in Tennessee,
right?
And they had to hide They had to
Yeah.
hide from their family. I mean,
Yeah.
you're not safe. Even though we're in America and you're not in the Middle East, you're not safe. I mean, it's people don't realize that.
Yeah. The phrase in Arabic, now I don't speak Arabic, I'm from Iran. We speak Farsi. And by the way, that was one of my problems that I had when I would ask my parents about God. Because when we would talk about God from a young age, I had questions about salvation and who is the true God, because they would tell me, well, this so-called Allah is God.
Right.
And one of my problems I had was that this so-called God Allah demanded that you pray in Arabic. And I would ask my parents, like, dude, I am from Iran. We're Persian. We're
Right.
not Arabs.
Right.
And so we speak Farsi. So I don't get it. If this God made me, and he made me, and I was born in this country,
Right.
how come he can't understand my language when I pray?
That's a pretty lame God, isn't it?
Yeah. What kind of a God is this? How impotent is this God? And of course, you can only question so much before you get in trouble, because they were told, hey, just
Right.
shut your mouth. You don't question.
Right.
But how amazing that now to come to find out the one true God, every tribe, every tongue, every nation can come to the one true God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And he created us. He is personal and intimate, and he wants to know us personally. The so-called God of Islam, the source of Islam, the Quran says that God is not knowable. He's not personal. And I thought, well, why would you then want to go to heaven
Right.
if you can't know God, be with God? Good news is, no, God is the true God is personal. The true God is knowable, and the true God says, "Call me Father." Wow, that's incredible. By the way, when my dad disowned me on day 3 of becoming a Christian, guess what? God became my Father. It became real to me that God is our Father.
Absolutely. So how long after you became a Christian did you start teaching people about the threat of Islam and the Red-Green Alliance?
About 4 years, I would say, after I finished Bible college, because I immediately, within about 6 months of becoming a Christian, felt the call to go into Bible college and go into ministry. And right after that time that I finished, then as I began to pastor and teach, the doors sort of slowly started opening for me to, share my story, share my testimony. I was trying to warn people. At the same time, I was teaching people how to share Christ with Muslims, how to biblically
Right.
share Christ. But it was really 2007. In 2007, it was when the Lord burdened my heart for what was going on in America with Islam. And then all of a sudden, right after I felt that calling and that preparation, a guy popped up by the name of Barack Hussein Obama. And all of a sudden, everyone's like, who's this dude?
Right.
Barack Hussein, And of course, remember, he claimed to be a Christian, but then everywhere he went, he extolled Islam and how wonderful Islam is. And, which there's no doubt in my mind, he was a liar and he was a Muslim through and through. He was a Marxist and a Muslim.
Yeah.
There's that red-green axis again.
Absolutely.
And so anyway, but that was, 2007 was really the burden on my heart for America, for the West, for the church, that began. And now, during that time, I was in law enforcement because I spent a 2-year stint in law enforcement as a police officer, which was an incredible experience, which has helped me kind of in our ministry. And I do, when I speak to legislators and law enforcement, and we used to do training in counterterrorism and those type of things. But 2009, I then began to start really traveling and really speaking across the country. So it's been about, as I said, about a 16-year now, full-time traveling and speaking across America, Canada, and message going into Europe, of course, because Europe is in big trouble.
Oh yeah, I think we're about to lose part of Europe. I don't know. I don't know if England can save itself. And France, I guess, is even in worse shape.
Yes,
it's a mess over there. And Austria,
it's a mess.
And people, that's what blows my mind. After 9/11, and of course, part of this is Bush's fault.
Right.
Because right after 9/11, he stood out there with CARE. and he said, that Islam is a peaceful religion, and these guys hijacked Islam, and he was standing right there with CARE/Muslim Brotherhood, who we know they have an agenda, we have a plan. The FBI used to know that, somehow they forgot it.
Exactly.
And really it had to do with Obama, because Obama, when he got in office, he purged all the training. It was already, the Bush administration had already kind of, moved people out that were telling too much truth about Islam.
Exactly.
And once we got Obama, not only did he put Muslim Brotherhood in DHS, but that meant the end of anything that the military would learn, or the law enforcement. And it's only gotten worse since then. So we have almost a generation worth of law enforcement and military that haven't been taught by their institutions anyway.
No, you're absolutely right. That purge, a good friend of mine was Phil Haney, who was then, in my opinion, was murdered. They claim it was suicide, but Phil was one of those people that had been inside Department of Homeland Security that knew he had tracked the Islamic movement and many of the cells of the Islamic movement in America, of course, including the Muslim Brotherhood. But you're absolutely right. Like we had our hand on the throat of the enemy at one point, in the sense of the information that was gleaned by the FBI at that time, where they went after the Holy Land Foundation that was funneling money to Hamas. They were going to indict not only the members of the Brotherhood, but all these front groups, including CARE.
Yeah, CARE. They said CARE is Hamas.
Is Hamas.
Yep.
And they were about to be indicted. And then as soon as Obama took office, Eric Holder, who was his attorney general, just shut the trial down. And then they buried the evidence. And to this day, we're still trying to figure out, where is that evidence? Now, there was obviously things that had already been made public, like the explanatory memorandum, which was the sort of the shorthand playbook of the Muslim Brotherhood, which they state, my new presentation that I'm doing in Sparta on September 22nd, called Battle for America. Yep. The subtitle, when we talk about Islamic sabotage and then our response, you see it there on screen. Yep. Well, the word sabotage is not our word. That directly comes from the mission statement of the Muslim Brotherhood. Yep. That's their language. And so, we're going to
sabotage by their own. It's something in reference to their own, not worthless hand, but something about their own hand. Yes.
Well, first it says sabotaging our miserable house by our hands.
Yes.
That's non-Muslims, and the hands of the believers. That's the Muslims.
Right.
So they're going to use our own hands to sabotage, quote, our miserable house. That's how they describe America.
Yeah.
So, I don't know what part of that, Dave, doesn't sound seditious. When you say, but this is the problem that I'm going to talk about in that presentation. The problem with this red-green axis is that on the red side of the axis, which is socialism, Marxism, communism, and now throw in globalism.
Right.
We used to have no problem articulating that those are governmental systems.
Right.
And those governmental systems are antithetical to our constitutional republic. Each of those systems would indirectly or directly call for the overthrow of our government. So if you're a communist, right? Well, obviously you don't believe in our constitutional republic. You want a communist form of government. So we used to articulate that. We used to be able to say, no, those people are. There's no compatibility.
Right.
If you don't like America, we'll get you a one-way ticket out of here. There's lots of wonderful, beautiful communist, Marxist countries. Go to Cuba, go to North Korea, go to China, But you get to the green side of that axis, which is Islam, and all of a sudden it becomes a religion.
Yeah. And it's never been just a religion. So
no, it's a governmental system sprinkled with religion.
Right.
There is no, and one of the things that we try to teach is there is no separation between the mosque and the state. And by the way, I know that firsthand, because what happened when they committed the coup in Iran? One of the first things they did was they trashed the constitution that had been under the Shah, and they instituted a new constitution under Islamic law or
Yep.
Sharia.
law. Yeah.
So I know this firsthand. This is what happened in my birth country, and of course we're witnessing it, as you said, in the UK, in France, in Germany, in Austria, in Sweden, in Norway, in Spain, and now we're seeing it in places in America. But the problem is that right side of the axis, which is the green, which you see right there. Here's the Muslim Brotherhood. Their own words said we're going to sabotage America by your hands. So how can we not stand here and say that's sedition? The reason is because Obama buried it. They buried this evidence. They buried this information, as you already said. And then they went after the good people that were in those positions that knew they had the knowledge, and they got rid of them. And then they purged all the. You remember after Obama or before Obama took office, Dave, we used to be able to say Islamic terrorism.
Right.
We used to be able to say that.
Yep.
After Obama and Holder and these guys, they destroyed our national security apparatus. They let the fox in the hen house. Yep. And all of a sudden, any reference to Islam, any reference to the Quran, any reference to Sharia was deemed as now you lose your career if you even hint at that. And they created a new term called violent extremism.
Yeah. And if you got some of the government training, it was usually anybody other than an Islamist that was a threat.
Yeah, they look like you and me.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's
they were a white supremacist. They were, and as you have that image on the screen, the problem is every time we try to go after Islam, not only does the media cover for them, but then you have these, to some extent, well-meaning Christians or Catholics that jump in the fray and say, oh, you know what? Like you said about Bush and the Bush administration. Look, Islam is not violent. Islam is peaceful. Islam is tolerant. And what they've done is they've hijacked the religion. No. It's the religion that hijacks people. It's the religion, so-called religion, because it's really a totalitarian system. Right. It is Sharia that hijacks and corrupts people. And the more you're fundamentalized, the more you are a threat to America, to the West, to Christians, to Jews. The more you're going to see violence as a means to an end, what they call jihad, violent jihad.
Yeah. We're still involved with NATO, and I think that's, I don't know why we even still have NATO, but with all of those countries being overrun with Muslims, and I mean, they could, they're actually talking about the possibility of a civil war in England now. And I think France would pretty much have to have one to get rid of all of their problems, and a lot of other countries in Europe like that. So, NATO's a liability right now in more ways than just the fact that, we've been covering them for all these years, and they really don't have much of a military. But, I think NATO, and this is kind of half kidding, it's headed to being the North Atlantic terrorist organization, because those countries they're liable to just go Muslim, to actually be taken over, because I don't know if they have the will to fight. I don't know if they have enough people that have the will to fight, because in a lot of those countries, they are not going to get rid of them without violence at this point.
You're absolutely correct. Look, Islamic history, you and I were talking about Dr. Bill Warner, CSPI.com, great scholar, great student of Islamic warfare. To me, I don't know anybody better that has studied and documented Islamic warfare and the death toll that jihad has brought about in 1,400 years. So it's not like we don't have a lot of history to go on, right? We have a ton of history that we can go on. Bottom line is, remember, by 732, after the spread of Islam out of Arabia, once Islam went and enforced apostasy laws, I've always made the argument, if there was no apostasy laws in Islam, Islam would have died out after Muhammad died. Because when Muhammad died, many of the people that were forced converted to Islam by the sword, they fled. They're like, good, this guy's dead, we're out of here. And the next successor of Muhammad, the next caliph, comes and says, look, we got to go hunt these people down. They call it the Ridda Wars, because that's what Ridda is apostasy.
Ah.
And by their estimation, they killed 40 to 50,000 of those who had left Islam. They apostatized because they were forced converted. Now, by 732, so 100 years later, they're in France. They're about to take over all of Western Europe. And you have the Battle of Tours. You have the Christian Knights.
Right.
If it was not for force, France would have already, or Western Europe would have already been conquered by Islam.
Right.
So we have this history. The difference is two things. One, the Europeans have been disarmed.
Right.
Let's not forget that. So the French, the Germans, the British, the Austrians, the Swedish, they're too pacifist,
yep.
and they've been disarmed. Secondary, their governments are already conquered. Yep. Their governments are already what we call dhimmi. They're already submitted and subjugated to Islam. That's why they're using now their quote hate speech laws to come after those who criticize Islam, like a Tommy Robinson or others in the UK,
right.
but many who have criticized Islam, many who have criticized, the so-called Palestinian movement or Gaza or Hamas. They're the ones who are being rounded up and investigated or arrested, even for social media posts.
Yeah.
So yeah. I don't see a scenario where Western Europe survives. I don't, because one, there's not a strong enough church there, that the true church.
Right.
And secondly, the birth rate.
Oh yeah, that's another, the war of the womb. We are losing the war of the womb. And we're losing it here too.
Sorry, say that part again.
The war of the womb. We are losing the war of the womb.
That's right. That's right. Jihad walada, jihad of the womb. And so, when you have 43%, 44%, something like that, of all children born in France, they're Muslim. When you have, now almost 20% population in France, 17, 18% population in the UK, they're milking the social welfare system. They're allowed in the UK to have over 80 Sharia courts so I don't see, yes, I agree with you. It's looking like a civil war with a minority of the Brits or the Germans or the French that are standing up. But again, they're disarmed.
Right.
So how do you then wage that? And not that I'm calling for violence. I'm just saying it's headed there. Yeah. Something is going to give here. And it's either they're going to succumb or this is going to turn violent. And I don't see how you force Islam out without force.
Yeah.
It's got to be mandated force by those governments to kick him out.
Yeah. And it just galls me that after 9/11, our country is so, we're stupid. We are just flat out stupid. For 20 some years now, we've had people that have taken it upon themselves to try to explain the threat to people. But once again, our government's not doing it. Our military's not, no part of the government is doing it. Yeah. Law enforcement doesn't have a clue. We've got Islam. I live in Stewart County. There is an Islamic compound that's been there for 45 years. It's the Muslims of America, also known as Jamaat al-Fukr. Well, in early 2000s, 2006, 2007 timeframe, the FBI put out a book about them because they have little communities all across America. At the time, the last number I heard was something like 35. I don't know what they have now. But the people are just like, oh, well, they've never been a problem. And I'm like, that doesn't mean they're not a problem. You need to understand the doctrine that they operate under. And we don't. And they're in all kinds of, like I say, they're in Georgia, they're in West Virginia, they're in Texas, there's some in California. And now most of that community, they're American blacks. A lot of them are ex-cons, or at least that was the case at one time. But their main focus is purifying Islam. So It goes back to what you said a few minutes ago about fundamentalism, and so that is one of the things that they focus on. So
well, and if I can just jump in there, one of the images that I sent to you was an image of the two houses, and honestly, and I wish more people would teach on this, but honestly, I don't know anybody else that is really extensively teaching on this. Because one of the problems is that people cannot understand Islam until you understand that they operate in a lower house and upper house standing. And this, of course, comes from the Quran itself, the abrogation, the law of abrogation, which means that when Muhammad got the early verses of the Quran, the so-called coexist verses in Mecca, versus when he migrated to the northern part of Arabia, at that time called Yathrib, later changed to Medina, and then now claims that he got latter verses. And those latter verses are where you see the verses of conquest and violence, especially towards unbelievers and especially towards what's called the people of the book, Christians and Jews. So you see how it says Dar al-Harb? That lower house, when they're in a community, in a state, in a city, in a town, in a country, where it could be a neighborhood, where they don't have the influence and the control. And it does not, by the way, have to do with population.
Right.
That means the house of war. Harb means warfare, meaning they're in a state of war against unbelievers. And here we're sitting saying, oh, they're peaceful, they're tolerant, everything's good. Their goal is to get to the upper house, the Dar al-Islam.
Right.
And that house means the house of the surrendered one. Islam doesn't mean peace, like what Obama lied to us. It means one who is surrendered. Aslama means, the word Arabic there, aslama means one who's surrendered. So when you surrender to, you go, well, what's the concept of peace? They claim Islam is peaceful.
Right.
Yeah, it's peaceful if you surrender to Islam. If you don't surrender to Islam, then you are at a state of war.
Yeah.
Now, here's the biggest difference. The biggest difference is, number one, culturally, when they're in the lower house, they don't have to appear to be fundamental.
Right.
They can appear to be westernized. They don't have to observe all the aspects of Sharia.
Right.
And they can make partnerships with their enemies. That's why you see the Muslims siding with the LGBTQ and the leftists and the trans and the pro-open borders and because in that lower house of warfare, they can make an agreement knowing they're going to break it.
Right.
And of course, what the most well-known concept of the lower house is the permissibility of lying.
Yep.
The permissibility of lying either by tongue, which is what most people know as taqiyya, lying by appearance, lying by agreement. Make a deal. We're going to break it later.
Right.
We're going to break any covenants later.
Yeah.
And that's where they get the foolish Christians and the foolish Jews and the foolish Catholics who are, they placated by this until they get to that upper house. And now we're seeing the fruit of that upper house in places like Dearborn Heights, Hamtramck, St. Cloud, Minnesota. Look at this. This is in Dearborn Heights. So they're flying the so-called Palestinian flag. And then did you see? I'm sure, Dave, you saw the new Arab patch that they came out with. Yeah, first of its kind. I think I sent an image of that, but they have this patch now. They claim it's what's the word? Oh, it's just optional. It's an optional patch. It's got diversity. Yeah. But on that patch of the Dearborn Heights Police Department, they have Arabic in there. And remember I said earlier, when you, there you go, there it is. When you submit to Arabic, I mean, look, Dearborn Heights, yes, it's more than 50% Muslim now. The police chief is Muslim, mayor is Muslim, city council is mostly Muslim. But here's the question. Don't they have, let's say, Russians living in Dearborn Heights? Don't they have Indians living in? So how about Mexicans? How come they don't have a patch for them?
Right.
But they're going to placate to the Muslims. They put Arabic, and that is a sign of submission.
Yep.
Because you're saying what Allah demands, which is that everybody must pray and recite in Arabic because they claim it's the language of heaven. So this is what happens when they get to the upper house. This is what it changes. This is exactly, look at the screen there. What happens when you get to the upper house is now cities bend the knee and say, we're going to allow the Islamic call of prayer. Started with Minneapolis.
Yep.
Then it went to New York. Soon, by the way, East Plano. Watch when East Plano comes out and says, we're going to allow the Islam. Already they're doing it. The mosques are doing it on loudspeakers and not getting in trouble. But here, The city actually said in New York, no permit required. So every Friday you can have prayers 5 times a day, starting at 5:30 in the morning. Can you imagine living in one of the boroughs and you got to wake up and hear that demonic sound that I used to remember from when I was in Iran?
My time in Iraq, I hated that. That was one of the things I hated the most about being in Iraq, was hearing that thing 5 times a day. And I think the last one's like at midnight. So, you know, you just fall asleep and then you hear that guy. I'm like, give me an AT4. I just need one AT4.
That's exactly right. But here we have American cities, American city councils there. I mean, think about the foolishness of this. Right. And by the way, how come no one is legally challenging this? How come nobody is saying, wait a second, what happened to equal accommodation? What happened to the so-called establishment clause of the First Amendment that said government shall not establish religion? Right. If a city is going to allow the Islamic call of prayer to be broadcast on loudspeakers throughout the entire city, but they're not going to allow that, are they going to allow Christians to broadcast the Lord's Prayer? Are they going to allow, some other religion?
If they're just being equal, yes, but we know that's not what this is about.
We know that's not what this is about.
You just mentioned cities. In Nashville, there is a lady, well, that's probably being generous, but there's this woman, and good Lord, her name is going to escape. I've talked about her on this show before with Kathy Henners, and she's on the city council, and she's been on there for a while, and she's one of the at-large candidates, and she won by one of the higher percentages of the at-large candidates. And matter of fact, we talked, I don't know why I cannot remember her name. Anyway, I had Kathy on here maybe a month and a half ago, and we talked about her maybe being the Mondami of Nashville. And then later on, we found some earlier information that somebody had actually talked to her about, hey, you think you'll ever run for mayor? Well, I'd like to do that sometime. I'm just not ready yet. Well, that was several years ago. So don't be shocked to see this Muslim from Nigeria run for mayor in Nashville. And you know what?
Sulfat Suara. Does that sound right?
Zawara, yeah. Zulfat Zawara. Zulfat. Yeah. That's the one. Anyway.
Nigerian American activist.
Yeah. And the left is so extreme in Nashville, too. I mean, look, Nashville is just San Fran on the Cumberland. That's all it is.
Yeah.
And so the lefties would support that. The lefties would think that's great.
Absolutely. Diversity. It's all about diversity, Dave. And so, I would not be shocked also to see someone like that with this sort of, refugee, probably some refugee kind of background from Nigeria, which of course Nigeria right now is the worst persecution of Christians on the planet is in Nigeria by the hands of the Muslims. There's no denying that Islam is systematically committing genocide in Nigeria, and it's not being talked about even in our churches. It's sickening to me, pastors who are so cowardly they won't talk about the persecution of Christians around the world. And so, I would not be shocked because the leftists love this story. Now, here's the funny thing about Hamtramck, Michigan. I always bring this up. Hamtramck, Michigan, which was the first city in Michigan to go full, more than 50% Muslim before Dearborn Heights. They have an entire Muslim city council and police chief, mayor, all of it Muslim. And so, they got there thanks to the left.
Yeah.
What is the first thing they did? One of the first things they did is they banned the pride flag in the city.
And when they do things like that, there are some people who think, oh, hey, we can work with them because they're pro-family, they're pro-traditional family, and they're against a lot of this left-wing stuff too. But, they don't realize that, they're not here to just be another group. They're not here to get along and go along to get along. They are here to take over. Now, whether they do or not, that's a whole different story. But if we don't wake up, they're going to.
Absolutely. If we do not wake up, in my opinion, we are maybe about a year behind Western Europe, especially now with the likes of Mamdani. You had the image earlier of Omar Fateh in Minneapolis. I mean, these are people that more than likely are going to be the mayors of these cities. Now, the DFL there, yeah, he claimed he was DFL endorsed, and then the DFL, which is basically their Socialist Democrat Party, pulled the endorsement because they found out that his camp was cheating. Oh, what a surprise, right?
I thought that was a requirement for a Democrat.
Yeah, well, and especially the Somali Muslims Minnesota has the greatest welfare fraud in American history, thanks to their Somali Muslim population. So this is, excuse me, I apologize. Something went down the wrong throat. This is
We got your website up there right while you're getting cleared up. But this is your Till ministry, Truth and Love Ministry, and that's you can go there and learn more. I'm sure your story about coming to America is on there, as well as other events and other things that you do. And it's a good site for anybody that hasn't checked it out yet.
Yes. Sorry about that. My entire backstory, the journey, we have different content on there that is, telling all of this stuff. And we have a lot of resources. For example, earlier when you were bringing up the information about the dangers of interfaith and how Christians get sucked into being able to, claim that they have this commonality with Muslims, spiritually speaking, we have a document on our website that refutes that shows that is unbiblical practice. We have documents on that same page on our website that talk about how Islam is an assault on our Constitution. In fact, I in my opinion, we are heading towards a constitutional crisis because of the influence now of jurisdictions and cities bowing a knee to Islam. And of course, the biggest thing that we see is this movement now, Dave, towards Islam, claiming that Islam is an Abrahamic faith.
Right.
And that indeed, because if that was true, then ultimately you have to make the assertion it's the same God. Right. And I can tell you it is not. Islam is not Abrahamic. And we have a document that on that same page on our website that lists 10 very, very strong reasons why Islam can never be an Abrahamic faith. Now, Arabs, can they trace their lineage back to Ishmael? Some can,
right,
but not Islam. Islam is this ideology that, as I said earlier, is masquerading as a religion. And that's our biggest battle, I think. Our biggest battle is we're losing the battle as long as we give it cover under the First Amendment as a religion.
Didn't we used to have something on the books back in the 50s that at that time dealt with communism? And I think there was a law, and I cannot remember the title of it, but, okay, if you were a communist, then we could, certainly if you weren't a citizen, didn't have full citizenship, we could do something about you. We didn't just have to let you stay here and spread your disease, so to speak.
Well, and certainly at the minimum, even if you couldn't get rid of them or deport them or let's say rescind their citizenship, at the minimum, we would never allow those people to run for office.
Right.
At the minimum, we'd never allow those people to have any hand upon our government structure. Yeah. So that's the problem, is that when it comes to Islam and on the green side of that axis, that law should equally apply. By the way, when I became a citizen of the United States of America, when you take your oath of citizenship, you're supposed to renounce any allegiance to any foreign law, any foreign government, any foreign potentate. So how come we can't use that? The moment any Muslim is heard saying, will you submit to our Constitution or to Sharia? And they say, of course, Sharia. To me, there you go. Yeah. That's it. Round them up.
Yep.
I should be visiting them and saying, we are revoking your permanent residency, and or we can revoke your naturalization, because I'm a naturalized citizen. So at any time, legally, that can be revoked if I show evidence that I'm trying to usurp and overthrow the United States government. Right. And how can we not better articulate this ideology as a usurpation of the United States government when the Muslim Brotherhood, by their own darn words, say we're going to sabotage, and that's what they're working at. Yet they hide behind, oh no, you can't say anything about Islam because it's just a religion, and that's to our demise if we don't wake up soon.
Well, and like Bill Warner likes to point out, we really don't care about your religious aspect as far as if you want to pray 5 times a day, that's on you. But you're not going to block the streets, and we're not going to play that garbage over loudspeakers, okay? And we're not going to cater to your religion, but you can believe what you want to believe. But the problem people understand is a good chunk of Islam has to do with how to deal with non-Muslims. And how we are basically, their goal is to make us their subjects, their dhimmis, their second-class citizens. Your choices at some point are, okay, we'll let you live and you'll be second-class, or we're just going to kill you. And that's what they've done in a lot of these countries, and that's how they took over a lot of these countries. A lot of countries that are Islamic now, at one time they were Christian, or they were something else before they were taken over by the Muslims.
That's a good question you should be asking the Nigerian member of the National City Council, to say, you come to America and you enjoy our Western freedoms and our religious freedom. I wonder how much she talks about the persecution of Christians in her country. So, we should nail her to the wall. And I'm talking metaphorically speaking, right. and grill her, and put her on the defensive and say, you're espousing whatever. I'm sure she's very leftist, I presume, right? Yeah. And so, but yet, how come the city of Nashville, or how come our legislature cannot come up with a resolution standing with persecuted Christians,
Good
saying
question.
This is wrong, this is evil, and we call out Muslim leaders, come out publicly and denounce jihad against unbelievers, denounce jihad against Christians and Jews. But they can't, because it is in the Quran. They can't because the most authoritative book on Islamic law, classic Islamic law, has a section, as you mentioned, Dave, on dhimmitude,
right,
on jihad. It says what jihad is. It's warfare against non-Muslims to establish the religion, and that warfare takes on many shapes. It doesn't have to be just violent warfare.
Right.
But in the section on dhimmitude, it gives all of the restrictions on non-Muslims. It tells you that non-Muslims must submit, cannot pray publicly, they have to dress differently. They have different rules. So, as you said, a huge portion of even the Quran itself deals with the treatment of non-Muslims. And that's where the abrogation comes in. That's where the upper house comes in. And can I circle back to a great point you made earlier?
Sure.
And I wish, on the 22nd, when we speak in White County at the Republican meeting there, if people want to join us, one of my messages for the Republican Party is be careful to ally yourself with any Islamic groups.
Yep.
Because when they get to the upper house, for a brief moment, as you said, they look conservative. They look like they're like-minded, because all of a sudden they went from supporting the leftist causes, like what Mamdani, right, is doing right now in New York, right?
Right.
Free this, free that. We want to be able to, see all the illegals, whatever. But their real goal is what you have on the screen. Their real goal is to establish enclaves. And can you guys believe that the New York Police Department, which, by the way, out of their 35,000 officers, 1,200 now are Muslim. 1,200, that's a small army.
That is huge.
They have their own patrols. Now, these are not sworn officers, but they're given police cars, as you see, Muslim community. That's what MCP stands for, Muslim Community Patrols. They're given uniforms, and they are allowed to go patrol their own area. This has been going on. You can see the date there. It's been going on for several years now. So
Wow.
it shouldn't be a shock when you see how Mamdani rises to that position.
Right.
Because there's over 1 million Muslims living in New York City now. It's the #1 population in America. And they do what they do, and we don't pay, and we just pretend that it doesn't exist. And we have apologists. See, in my opinion, ignorance is one thing, but the apologists are the worst. Right. Those who come and they try to defend Islam, and they're not even Muslim. They are the worst. They're the worst fools of them all. Using the communist term, useful idiots, right? They're the worst. They're
absolutely.
The worst.
You know, another thing is concerning. So, like you mentioned, Epic City down there in Plano, Texas, and of course, I've had Rob Bodish on from. He was the former head of Homeland Security, Texas Homeland Security, and he knows a lot about that situation down there. But that's happening in other places now. Yasser Qadi, the guy that started that, he came from Memphis. He was in Memphis before he went down to Texas. And,
exactly.
You know, the current administration, not long ago, about a week or two ago, they were talking, I saw something where, okay, they were going to maybe designate the Muslim Brotherhood and CARE as terrorist, which is way overdue, and I don't know if they've done it yet, but at the same time they're doing that, they're stupidly inviting Qatar over here to invest in our country, Saudi Arabia over here to invest in our country, and Memphis is ate up with Qatari money. I mean, the Qataris are thick in Memphis, and you know, I'm sure that even though Yasser Qadi is down in Texas, there's a big Muslim community there, and I won't be surprised to see them try to set up some version of Epic City in Memphis at some point in time, or Atlanta. I mean, I could see it happening in some place like Atlanta. You know,
great point about Atlanta. Great point. Atlanta is number 6 or 7 as far as the largest Muslim population in America. Houston is number 2. Dallas is number 5. So they are targeting the South. And I agree with you 100%. And again, our friend Kathy Hinters is excellent at tracking this stuff. But there's no doubt in my mind that Memphis will probably be the first enclave that they will establish in Tennessee. Now, of course, we have Murfreesboro, south of Nashville. We have Nashville itself. We're starting to see more of a population even here in the Knoxville area where I live, but Knoxville, Tennessee area. But Memphis, for sure, is on the radar. And Dave, you gotta. Something that I try to point out is that this movement towards creating these cities is new strategy. Because typically Muslims, historically, they come into existing areas and begin to systematically take those areas over. Again, lower house to upper house, lower house to upper house. All of a sudden, the strategy of, look, we're just going to build our own city.
Right.
And we've been fighting one up in Lino Lakes, Minnesota, that fortunately the city council was able to get a moratorium on there. Which is about half the size of the Epic one, Epic 2.0. Let's not forget, they already have Epic 1.0. There's already the mosque and neighborhoods around the mosque. They're going for 2.0, which is over 4. By the way, I'm going to be speaking Friday, September 27th in East Plano.
Oh, wow.
And I'll be there.
That'll be interesting.
Yeah. And so we'll see what happens there. We had a heck of a time trying to find the facility. And so we're going to be actually at the library, and we'll see what happens, because I think they're going to, do something to try to cancel us there. But that's, people in Texas better wake up, because if Texas, if Tennessee, if Florida, if Georgia, if these places don't push back, like already, we should be going and talking to our county commissioners, city councils, saying, man, if we even get a whiff that you're going to allow, that you're going to zone some area for a Muslim-centric city, which, by the way, is their terminology. Muslim-centric city, we will bring all havoc upon you and this county council. We'll vote you out. We'll protest against you. We'll show up at every meeting. We are not going to allow this. And oh, by the way, we are not going to allow the Islamic call of prayer to be broadcast in our city. Because when it happened in Minneapolis, the head of CARE over there came out publicly and said, we were shocked how easy it was, and that this is now a blueprint for every American city. So that's their agenda. We just don't want to believe it.
Well, and September 11th is just a few days away. And it just, I keep thinking that at some point in time, people will start connecting the dots. But I'm not sure that they will. I don't know that, I don't know that they will, especially if there's nobody at the top pushing this down. It's hard for us to push this up because, we're labeled as, you're just an extremist or you're an Islamophobe, whatever. Yep. But I mean, just look at their, like you said, it's in their doctrine. I don't know why every police officer is not required to read the explanatory memorandum. I don't know why every, at least officer in the military, is not required to read the explanatory memorandum. So they know, hey, these guys are, when the Soviet Union was still in existence, and I was in the Army at the time, even as an enlisted soldier, you got some training about the communist doctrine and why it was bad. What they believed and what their goals were. We got at least some of that. Well, we got this other entity here that's been around for all these years and has basically wreaked havoc wherever it's been allowed to flourish. And it's like we don't know anything about it. And it's just the religion. It's insane.
Yeah. I mean, again, as we established earlier, there was a systematic purging, and that's why. And by the way, I sent you a couple of images from the shooting in Minneapolis last week. The connection that very few made because they were trying to bury the story because it was the trans, the trans was getting a lot of the attention, the trans terrorism, I call it. But this is again red-green axis, and I did one of my shows where I said it's red-green axis because what did we see on his weapons? We saw pro Gaza, pro-quote Palestinian messages, like this is for the children. There you go, right? Kill Donald Trump, extra Jew gas. You see their extra thick Jew gas for the children. But they also had, you can see on the right there, look at that, suck on this, mashallah. Now that is an Islamic phrase. And then he had on one of his weapons the name of Muhammad Atta, one of the 9/11. So isn't it ironic that we're about to come to 9/11 again? And here's the name of Muhammad Atta, one of the 9/11 Saudi Muslim Islamic jihadist hijackers. And mashallah means that it is not only saying Allah's will, it is saying that Allah is blessing this, that it's like an applause. It's like saying, well done, well done. So how come that part of this didn't come out? That this trans nut job, right, who is obviously, we know this is demonic, we know it's spiritual, but yet he is showing his allegiance to Islam, to the Islamic agenda, to the Hamas, Palestinian, so-called Palestinian agenda. And none of that came out. No. Well, that part of the story was buried because you see it time and time again. It's the red and green axis.
That's just like with Mandami. They do identify him as a Marxist, but they don't. It's not like every time they talk about him, they don't talk every time the fact that he's a Muslim as well. They'll focus.
But
on
Dave, you said it.
Yeah.
But you said it at the top when the Trump administration, and I voted for the president 3 times.
Yeah.
But when the Trump administration is getting $1 trillion from the Qataris, is getting $600+ billion from the Saudis, is getting $1 trillion from the Arab Emirate nations and Kuwait and these countries, every dime that comes to America has got to be Sharia compliant.
Yeah.
They are not allowed to spend money in America unless Sharia is connected to it. Yeah. So every dime is connected to Sharia.
Yeah.
And that's what we're missing.
And Qatar I mean, that's been known for terrorist financing for years. There's been a lot of investigations on different terrorist attacks about, where the financing came from. And I can't remember the guy's name, and I couldn't pronounce it if I could remember it, but he was involved. He was a cleric over in Qatar and worked at, he oversaw the banking industry there to make sure whatever they did was Sharia compliant. And he calls Sharia compliant finance jihad with money. That's
right.
What he calls it. Now, there's a Tennessee connection there. Samar Ali, who in roughly 2012, during the Haslam administration, she was appointed by Bill Haslam and Bill Hagerty, and defended by Bill Hagerty, and defended by Steve Gill, by the way, because she was appointed to the Economic Development Council. And, it came out that, hey, wait a minute, she's an expert in Sharia compliant finance. Well, they claimed that was not why they hired her, but they put her in charge of the international division of it. Now, she didn't stay there all that long. We did raise some cane about it, and of course we were just put down by people like Haggerty and others. Basically, the equivalent of what Hillary said. We were basically a basket of deplorables. We're bigots, we're we're prejudiced, we're whatever. And anyway, her father, Suba Ali, lives in Waverly, Tennessee, sits on the board of the Jerusalem Fund. The Jerusalem Fund is all about BDS. It's had some very bad characters at their different events over the years. The guy that she married, he used to be involved in the banks back in Qatar, and was there, I think, at the same time maybe that this other cleric, one of those same financial institutions. But yet, this is who we're going to bring over here and have invest in trillions of dollars or millions of dollars in America. I don't understand how Trump doesn't get it. I just don't understand how Trump. Yeah. But that tells me too, there's nobody around Trump that knows anything about this.
Exactly right. My apologies. I'm getting over a little bit of a cold, chest cold. So I apologize. Got this coughing fit. But Trump. That's the problem. Number one. Look at his so-called spiritual advisor. So when you have that individual as your spiritual advisor, that tells you everything about the poor spiritual advice.
You can say the name if you want. It doesn't.
Paula White, exactly. Yeah. And sadly, I saw this at the White House. I was blessed to get invited to the National Day of Prayer event back in May at the White House, and it wasn't a prayer event; it was an interfaith event. And so they had a Muslim chaplain praying during this event. And one of the things that he does is he cites the first chapter of the Quran. Well, the first chapter of the Quran, for those who do not know, which they pray in their daily prayers every day, starts out by saying, "O Allah, show us the straight path, that we do not go the way of those who come before us, the way of those who have been cursed, and the way of those who've been misguided." Now, the people who are cursed by their own interpretation are the Jews, and the people that have been misguided are the Christians. So right there in his opening prayer, he's saying, let us not be like the Jews and the Christians who are misguided or cursed.
And Paula White's okay with that. Paula White's fine with that.
Well, he said it in English, but he didn't say that part of it. He only said the first part of the verse, which is, "Oh God, show us the straight way." And he stopped saying the rest of the passage. And here you have on the stage, because this was at a time of prayer, that you had, Jewish rabbis and Catholic priests and Paula White and President Trump, and they're all there. And Paula White is sitting there nodding her head in agreement, oblivious that this Muslim is cursing Christians and Jews. You had members of hostage families that were there at that event, Jewish parents of hostages that were at that time still being held hostage in Gaza, and they're being cursed. And the president comes up after this Muslim prays and says, "That was wonderful." Now, he doesn't know. He has no idea what's being said, but you don't have advisors around them who dare even be able to say, "Mr. President, do you know what Sharia is? Do you know that this money comes with submission and strings and the Sharia compliance financing and all?" And by the way, Sharia compliant financing now, which just even 10 years ago was about a $500 billion industry. They are now estimating by next year it's going to be a $6 trillion industry. Over 150 major banks now have these Sharia products, and they are asset based. They do not have to pay interest on loans, something that you and I don't get. So it should be unconstitutional. It's not equal protection. It's not equal access under the law. But yet money speaks volumes. Because if it's all about the economy, then there goes our values and our morals. So we got to wake up. We got to wake up.
Yeah, if your only bottom line is the bottom line, then you're in a bad way. So, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, well, look, one of the things that, thank you for bringing this up. One of the things that I wanted to highlight was I want to encourage Christians to really be on guard, especially in these days. Look, I believe we're in the last days. I believe we're seeing so many incredible things happen. The Bible prophecy, Israel return. There's talk about building a third temple. But the president has brought about the Abraham Accords. And I tell people I cannot support the Abraham Accords. I couldn't support it right at the end of his first term. And I can't support it now as it's being expanded. Because the Abraham Accords, which was claimed to be diplomatic, is not diplomatic. If you go back to that image that is from the State Department, with the words, it shows the other one. It shows what it says in its own language. In paragraph 2, we encourage effort to promote interfaith and intercultural dialogue to advance a culture of peace among the 3 Abrahamic religions and all humanity. So by its own assertion, this is a spiritual document. It is trying to bring together the so-called 3 Abrahamic religions. And that's why we put that document on our website, Islam Can Never Be Abrahamic, because Islam denies the Abrahamic covenant. Islam claims that it was Ishmael that was the son of Abraham that was going to be sacrificed, not Isaac. They deny the Isaac line. They deny the Isaac line through Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Well, if they deny that, that means they have to deny the line of the Messiah, because in the book of Matthew, in the first chapter, it gives you the genealogy of Jesus, the Jewish Messiah, all the way back to David, and then all the way back to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Islam comes along 600 years later and says, oh, no, the Jews stole the covenant. It was Ishmael that was supposed to be sacrificed, not Isaac. It's the wrong son, the wrong location, and the wrong covenant. How can Islam be Abrahamic? And yet, again, if the Trump administration had called this the Oslo Accord, the Washington, D.C. Accord, the Jerusalem Accord, I would have no problem with that concept of it. They made it a spiritual document. And Christians who believe in the one true God and believe that Jesus Christ is the only way of salvation and is God in the flesh cannot support this document, because you're supporting a document that ultimately would deny Christ. If Islam is true, then there is no Jesus the Christ. Jesus cannot be the Son of God. Jesus is not God, and the Quran says he was never even crucified. Think about that.
Yeah.
So, final words I was going to say is, this is an incredible time. We're living in incredible days. We're seeing incredible things happen, but at the same time, Brother Dave, there's great deception. There's great off-the-charts deception. And so my admonishment for Christians out there is, number one, get into the Word of God. Make sure you're prayed up. Pray up. You got to be armored up. You got to be grounded in the truth so that we don't fall for this stuff. Number two, to anybody that's out there politically conservative, listen, I get it. Having President Trump was a far better option than what we were about to get. But this is not a time to go to sleep. There's a lot of things that are being implemented under the Trump administration that are very concerning. And we got to be vigilant and make sure that we are guarding our constitutional republic. My allegiance isn't to a man. Absolutely. My allegiance is to God. And we also have, when I was a police officer, I took an oath to defend this Constitution against enemies, foreign and domestic. That's our ultimate goal. Men come, men go, leaders rise up, leaders fall. And we got to pray for him and pray for the right people in these positions.
I talked about TDS in the first show, and there's there's two types of TDS. One that hates everything he does and thinks it's wrong, and one that thinks anything he does is fine. Well, to those of you who think anything and everything he does is fine, hey, don't be a magtard, okay?
Exactly.
Use your head and figure out what if he does something good, that's fine, but not everything he does is good. Hey, thank you for being with us. And this is another website. There's your Rumble site. And now you're going to be in White County on September 22nd. And we'll pull that
6 o'clock.
Yeah, 6 o'clock. And I've got that advertisement down here a little bit further. But this is they can reach you on Facebook. Yeah, right there, White County Republican Party, and it's got the address on it. Monday, September
at the courthouse.
Yep.
6 o'clock Monday the 22nd. Yeah. And just going back to Rumble, I was just going to say, we do, because so much is happening. And brother, you know this. It's hard to keep up on all this stuff. And because we try to be on the front lines and we try to go where the battle is. November, we're going to be down in Sugar Land, Texas on the 22nd there, having a rally at the same place the Muslims came and broadcast that call of prayer from Mecca, polluting. We're going to be there sharing the gospel, sharing the good news, worshiping, lifting up the name of the one true God. So we try to go on the front lines, but we do these live shows because travel is limited. It's getting expensive. And also the opportunities. I mean, less people, sadly, have ears to hear these messages. So rumble.com/Shahram Hadian, that's our channel. And we do bring these live shows every Tuesday, every Thursday. They're archived as yours are too. We are back on YouTube. We got kicked off of YouTube a couple of years ago for telling the truth about COVID and telling the truth about the elections and things like that and Islam. But we're back on YouTube. We're on Facebook. So thank you for helping us to promote that. And folks that can want to be connected to this aspect of things can at least stay connected to our ministry. It's a free resource. And so please take advantage of it. Go to Rumble, click join, like it, share it, and get the message out to other people. Hey, we got to wake up.
Absolutely. Well, hey, thanks once again. Definitely love to have you back. And hey, if you're going to be around Sparta on the 22nd, you need to try to make that show. I want to thank the audience for taking the time to watch our program tonight. It doesn't cost anything to subscribe, so please be sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons as well as the notification bell. Thanks again to Jonathan and Mary for their financial support for July, August, and September. You guys are great. You're making a huge difference. We really appreciate it. Check out our audio podcast on iHeartRadio, Spotify, and other platforms as well. Sign up for our weekly newsletter at our website, teeninformer.com. Find and follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Stewart County Republican Party will hold their annual Reagan-Trump dinner at the Stewart County Visitor Center on September 11th. Doors open at 5:30. Dinner is served at 6. We'll have a candidate forum for the 7th District. Tickets are $25 or a table of 6 for $120. But hey, we're just about sold out. So if you want it, you better get it quick. Call Dave at 931-237-1026 for tickets. We the People of West Tennessee presents the Nullification Past and Present. Tennessee Citizens for State Sovereignty. That's a group that I'm involved with. This will be Tuesday, September 16th from 6 to 8 p.m. Danny Blitz will be giving the presentation. This is at Jackson First Assembly, 1027 West Forest, Jackson, Tennessee. And our guest right now, this is the advertisement again for this coming Tuesday. If you can be there, you really need to. I think you can learn a whole lot. We can only cover so much on here, and I think he'll be able to get into more details there. So make sure you go to that if you have the opportunity. And September 17th, 6 to 9 p.m., Monty Fritz meet and greet at the Keystone Resort in Laredo, Tennessee. If you go on, there is a number down there that you need to call, 931-446-7873 to RSVP. Now, it doesn't cost anything to attend this, but you will have to eat dinner there, okay? And it's not crazy expensive, okay? Very nice place. I was there a few weeks ago for an event. It's a great place. So next Monday, 7 p.m., we ask who were the Anti-Federalists and what do we need to learn about them today. William Watkins Jr. from the Independent Institute joins us to explain why understanding this group is the key to understanding the full intent of our United States Constitution. Then later that evening, 8:30, for our second show, Ann McLean of the Virginia Council joins us to talk about the legal fight against the city of Richmond and the unrelenting Marxist attack on Confederate monuments. Who will they target next? Hope you can join us. That's it for now. Good night from Paris, Tennessee, that is.